through basic training and all of that?
Yeah, basic training was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina,
Ooh.
and while there, and this is the honest guy, and I'm getting ready to tell you things that you probably won't believe, but the whole series of events is the honest to God's truth. While in basic, they came, some guy came and he's looking all strack and stuff, and he was looking for people to join volunteer for airborne. And this one guy standing next to me says, "Hey man, let's do that." And I looked at him, and before I said anything, I knew that he was as much as a wimp as I was, so I couldn't see him going. But I said, "Okay." So we volunteered for jump school. That being said, after I graduated basic, I went to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri for my AIT, which was engineering, combat engineering. And they taught us how to build 10 by 10 command centers, so to speak. But while I was there, I got my orders because I was wondering where I was going to be sent. But I got orders to go to Benning for jump school. And I had forgotten completely that I had volunteered for jump school. So I ended up going to jump school. And while in jump school, and this is the God's honest truth, this guy, a Green Beret, comes to the formation, and he's asking people to volunteer for the Green Berets. And I knew, hell, I'm not going to do that. But my buddy, who was a good man actually, Hester, his last name was Hester. He said, "Well, let's volunteer for that." And I it's like just like before, I said, "Okay, let's do that." And unfortunately, he had some, as a young man, I had got in trouble with the law, and so they wouldn't take him, but they took my sorry ass. And so that's how I got into going into the Green Berets. That right there. I wasn't like a lot of people, like I discovered later on, that a lot of these men I had met, they were dedicated. They were really, really into wanting to do something for their country. I really had no concept of that or any idea that I was going to be fighting for my country, anything like that. I just went in probably the worst way possible, just not even knowing what I was getting my butt into, and no really high level of honor or anything like that.
Oh, do you remember the year that you got through with basic AIT and jump at
Yeah,
Benning, and when you got
uh,
to into at Fort Bragg and began training group?
I got the I went in the army in August of '67 and got through with AIT just before December, right around December of '67. So I got to go home for 30 days. And after that 30 days, January of '68, went to Fort Benning. So it was like the first 3 weeks of January, and it was cold. Let me tell you, it was cold there. And I'm basically from Ohio, so I knew what cold was, but it was cold there too in January out there running everywhere you go. But I don't know
Do
how I
you
made it through it, but I made it through it.
what was your excuse me, when you were in training group, what was your MOS? What were you trained as?
Okay, I went to a training group, like I say, I got there just at the end of January of '68, and let's see, what was my MOS? Um, oh, 05B, radio operator. Can't believe it. Did. Um, and the Army was looking at a program that instead of sitting through 8 hours of da alpha, they had this program called the Judson E. Cornish program. And what it was is that learning a Morse code through word association. So, like, instead of hearing da alpha, you heard da along, the word along, you know, and the da would be the word along would be real loud, and the da would be real low until it just increasingly changed, where the da became louder, but you heard along. Like B was break cylinder. I couldn't tell you what that is now, 50 years later, but C was Carolina, D was Delta, E was Echo, you know, that kind of thing. Or Ed, I forget. It's been so long. But anyways, word association, and the Army never really bought it, and probably good reason, because I can't even remember it now.
Did you have any guys that you would go on to serve with in training group with you?
Yeah, a friend of mine, a guy named oh God, I can't think of his last name right now, but his name was Jim. But he introduced me to this guy who I thought was a pretty cool guy, a guy named Glenn Uemura. And we had actually gone through jump school at the same time, but didn't even know each other then. But I met Glenn. We were both in Company B of training group. And of course, yeah, years later, you know, I ran it, not a lot, that many years later, but in '69, I ran into Glenn there at the Khartoum at CCC, and eventually ran that mission with him.
That is so neat. That's and we'll guys later on we'll be getting into a story with Joe and Mr. Glenn. Sadly, Glenn's no longer with us. But guys, if you were wondering, this is actually a photo of RT Vermont with Franklin Doug Miller, Medal of Honor, earned the Medal of Honor. Chuck Hine, sadly, who they lost during a freak accident with a white phosphorus grenade, and of course Major Plaster over there. And I believe Glenn and Major Plaster were strap hanging on this mission. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's the story on that. But if I'm not mistaken, also, did you not have the wild man and future 1-0 award winner, Mr. Mike the Werewolf Sheppard, with you?
No, I was never Mike. I met Mike in training group also, and then after I had been and after I had left the recon teams and started doing commo, Mike came to Khartoum, and I tried to befriend him, but I don't think he either didn't remember me or, you know, but he was a wild man, was a good description for him.
He very close with his yards, from all accounts a very tough man. I've heard some stories of him defending his Montagnards who were let's just say being abused. And I've heard he took cowardice very serious. He confronted a Green Beret captain, if I'm not mistaken, at Dak Siang one afternoon when a helicopter crashed, and needless to say, he is quite the guy. He's still alive. He's still with us, and he's quite the guy, like Mr. Joe said.
To this day, I remember a story that Mike told us in training group, and I know he was, you know, being funny, but it describes him completely. He told us that, did you ever hear about that part in the Bible where the Philistines or some guy gets beaten up and the Good Samaritan comes on and helps the guy out? And we all say, yeah, yeah. And he says, well, I was the guy, one of the guys that beat his ass up.
I remember you telling me that story, and I said, that sounds exactly like Mike Sheppard. What a guy. What a guy.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, if if Mr. Glenn was in your training group, that means around that time, Bob Bechtold, Terry Cadenback, both of them were with Mr. Glenn at one point in time in training group.
Those names are familiar, but I don't really know them. But I know I've heard the name, especially Bob Bechtold.
Yeah, the
the
redhead. Yeah, the wild redhead. Terry actually, he's been on quite a few times, and he was at CCC with you, but he was over at the Hatchet Forces.
Oh, okay.
So, so you've gotten trained. You graduate, I should say, and are you what's going to go on next? Are you looking to go to an A team? Are you what are you thinking
Well,
now?
I go to after I graduate the Special Forces Training Group. I go stationed with the 6th on the signal company, and I'm there probably 6 months. From July till about December, when just before that December, I got my orders for Vietnam, and I didn't really volunteer for Vietnam, and I'm pretty sure this is a true story, but back in those days, these guys had a phone number of some lady in D.C. that they could call her up, and they would volunteer to go to Vietnam. She put my name on the list. Well, those guys put my name on the list without asking me, which was fine, because I figured I'd be going anyway. But that's just how I ended up going, because they volunteered my name because, Joe, sure, you want to go.
So, wow. So the guys actually volunteered your name with Mrs. A, and she ended up getting all of y'all in.
Yeah.
Wow. That's actually one of the more wild Miss A's stories that we've heard, because everybody, of course, that we've spoken with, or I should say 90% of the guys have mentioned calling her or hearing rumors of this lady that can do anything at the Pentagon. And wow, your buddies went ahead and offered your name up and said put him on the list as well.
Yeah. And they were great guys. One of the guys' last name is Brehm, Brehm, I think, or something like that. But he was a good guy, John Brehm. Yeah. Like I said, I didn't mind it because I knew I was destined to go there anyway.
So I imagine it's pretty quick from that point on. Do you know beforehand what your job's, where you're going to go, or is it Vietnam when you?
When we got there, I don't think we're not even too far from the tarmac. Just landed, and there's a bunch of us milling around, and there's this old first sergeant talking to us and everything, and he's going to say, "Boys, I'm looking for somebody who wants to volunteer and do something for us. I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you this: after you do it for 6 months, if you don't want to do it no more, you don't have to." And Ron Gravett turns to me, and I had just met him, like 2 hours before or something like that. He said, "Well, let's go do that, man." And I said, "Okay." So everything I did in the military was like, "Hey, Joe, let's do this." And I just say, "Okay," without even thinking about the consequences or where I was even going. Yeah, that's Ron. I understand he's passed also.
Sadly, he has. I believe 2 or 3 years ago. Yes, sir. Right as COVID started, I believe.
Well,
yes, sir. Very sad.
The very first week we got to CCC, he got put on the mic force, I think, and went out, got shot up, got some shrapnel to the side of his head, not very deep at all, just a flesh wound, and got his Purple Heart.
CIB and Purple Heart right off the bat.
CIB and Purple Heart, yeah.
I think I've actually got photos of him bandaged up and boogered up. I'll have to see if I can find that while we're talking. But I've actually got he was the first one I saw in these. Again, guys, if y'all don't have them, y'all need to pick up these wonderful books for history and preservation sakes. Jason's books, but he was the first one I saw with the war medallion, and I ended up getting a recreation, not gold, of course. I didn't have that kind of money, but once I saw that, I was like, wow, that is the
Now,
coolest thing
which
I've ever
one
seen.
was that? Was that the one that said war, or was that the B-52?
That was the regular war one. He does have a B
Okay,
52 one too, though. Also, that one's
looks like
awesome.
looks like the peace symbol, but when you take a closer look at it, it's a B-52.
Yes, sir.
I
And
had that one for a while.
okay, wow. And there's some kind of cool writing, or it may have been customized, but I know some of the guys had something on it. John Plaster had one that was engraved, and I, for the life of me, can't remember what it was, but it was something quite funny. Uh, y'all had some really good medallions and all of that. Y'all thought up and got made. Y'all were on the cutting edge of everything. Um, so when you and or I should say when Ron volunteers y'all for SOG, uh he ends up of course at CCC. Do y'all know pretty much immediately where y'all are going? Do y'all get a briefing beforehand, or are y'all sent down to
Well,
content?
what I remember is like as soon as I got there, they actually sent us down to Entree Island
Oh, okay.
to get oriented, so to speak.
Combat orientation course.
Yeah, and weather-wise and stuff like that, I
Mhm.
guess. But yeah, and then I think I was assigned to Team Florida though before I went down there, but I couldn't be positive. I might have done Entree Island even before I went to Contium. I just really, to be honest with you, I can't really remember. But I think I went to CCC first, and then to Entree Island.
Weren't you at COC, or where were you hanging out with Dave Maurer? Uh,
Oh, okay, that was a. I think that was part of that. That was
okay.
part of that. Davy Maurer. Yes. Uh, I guess we had a few beers or something, but we ended up, rappelling off the a 30-foot tower thing there, in our underwear,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and making noise and shit like that. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, he might have come out with his M16 or something. I don't think we had cars at that time, but let out a burst of six. You know what I mean, from the air. And the story is that some major captain called him to to his death the next day, and the rumor was that Davy said, "Sir, the only thing between you and me is fear and atmosphere."
God, I love Dave. He is quite the character,
Yeah,
guys. That's
and you know
Dave
what?
right there.
I call them the leg officers and stuff like that. They couldn't do anything to us. You know what I mean? We were off limits to them.
Fear and atmosphere. You gotta love that. That's something right out of a Vietnam movie right there. uh, so
Like,
wow.
I don't know if it's true, but it's all I always heard that.
So after all that is taking place, are you think, or you at some point in time thereafter, or maybe even before, you're already, for a fact you're going to be on RT Florida, I should say.
Right, right. And the first person I meet is Ken Workley.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and in fact, he and I, right there first, we're the only two Americans, along with Sergeant Doney. And I was the new guy, and but a couple of our team members uh, had one of them was Chung. I think his name was Chung, and he was a Chinese Hmong, and he had been wounded. So he came back to the team, and I said, "Oh, here's the new guy." And he said, "No, I'm not the new guy. You're the new guy." Of course, he's correct.
Got a
But
pic of
yeah, what a great man.
I've heard from numerous SOG men that he was just not only a good guy, great friend, but just outstanding in the woods, as y'all say.
Yeah. My only mission with him was actually a local patrol because maybe that's not the case. Um, well, right after I joined, he went home on the 30-day leave because he extended 6 months.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And so maybe it was after I because I ran a couple missions with Sergeant Doney, just him and me.